Like, we've been able to get away with some pretty crazy stuff, especially when interest rates were, money was free basically, and it was a grow at all cost mentality.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of our extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's topic is all about the state of sales. Has the sales function really improved over the last 5 or 10 years or not? And to help us out with that, I'm honored to have John Barrows, CEO of JB Sales and one of sales profession's biggest voices. Welcome, John.
Hey, what's going on, Carlos? How you doing?
Thank you so much for doing the show. I've known about you for years, so I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is going to be hopefully a fun conversation that people get some value out of one way or the other.
One thing to prepare our guests, I like being a little provocative and I like poking the bear. And John, you seem to like it too, so I think it's going to be a fun jury.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nobody's ever accused me of being shy, so
I think it's two Northeastern guys that at the end of the day, that's just who we are at the core.
Yeah. I always tell people, there's a big difference between being direct and being rude. Yeah, there's a fine line, but a big difference. And, I think being from Boston, everybody thinks we're rude, and I disagree. I just think we're more direct than most people. So, and I think the world needs a little bit more of that, because I do think, and this is going to lead to our conversation, that we have gotten a little soft. So,
all right, so let's talk about the situation over the last 5 or 10 years, our whole COVID years. What are your impressions about the state of sales today?
So, I have a keynote that I do, and I position 2010 to 2022 as the golden age of sales. And I say that, especially in tech sales. And I say that because if you got into tech sales after 2010, I'm sorry, it hasn't really been that hard. Like, we've been able to get away with some pretty crazy stuff, especially when interest rates were, money was free basically, and it was a grow at all cost mentality. We have way over engineered the sales process and taught these kids on tech and process more than we have on fundamentals. And so now I think we have a whole generation of sales reps that actually fundamentally don't know how to sell. And it's not their fault. It's because they've been taught to, blast out template cadences, at scale, make 100 dials with a auto dialer and with a, generic message, and make sure that they ask their BANT questions and all that stuff. And they're going through a process. They're not selling. They're not helping. They're not curious. They don't help people solve problems. They're literally going through a process. And quite frankly, it's always been that way in sales, at least my experience. There's always that breakdown. I end all my presentations with 10-60-30. And the concept there is, one of the reps asked me, John, if, after going through my presentation, he looked at all the logos and he said, hey, John, all those logos, Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, all these different companies that you've trained, they're all kind of competitors of ours. So if you're going to train us all in the same stuff, how are we going to differentiate? And my answer to him was 10-60-30. I go, 10% of you in this room are going to take what I tell you and execute at the highest level, because that's the type of people you are. 60% of you in this room are going to do something different because it's easy and it makes sense. And 30% of you in this room ain't going to do shit different. So the question isn't how many people can I train? The question is what percentage do you want to be in? And as it relates to how things have changed, I used to say, well, there's always that bell curve, right? You always got your bottom 30%, and it is just what it is. That's our society. We tolerate, not even mediocrity. We tolerate crap, right? And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the percentages are probably still roughly the same before AI, after AI, before COVID, after COVID. But now the danger I see for the bottom 30%, I think the bottom 30% are, quite frankly, irrelevant. I think AI can do it better than them, better, faster, cheaper, without even thinking about it. I think the bottom half of that middle 60%, right? Kind of the B players that were always just kind of skating by, not trying to cause any waves and whatever. Unfortunately, I think they're irrelevant and they don't know it yet. The 10% is always going to be the 10%. I think the ones who are going to survive and thrive are that top end of that 60%, that middle bucket there. The people who are willing to put in the work, are curious enough to try out new stuff like AI and elevate and educate themselves, and want to evolve. So I think that's the shift. I don't think the shift is in talent or whatever. I think the percentages are always going to shake out the way they are. But I just think the danger is in the lower half now just becoming obsolete, which they already are.
And it sounds like it's from two avenues. One, things like AI coming in and being able to, hey, if all you're doing is pushing out emails, hey, I can automate that.
Yeah.
I don't need you,
Right.
right? If you're not willing to pick up the phone and have a conversation, and you can't even have a conversation, then again, I don't need you, right? You know, it's I can only do so much with what you got, right?
Well,
The other aspect you mentioned though was also the economy, right? The hey, money's not cheap. So like
Right.
over the last few years, you know, it went from growth at all costs to, hey, VC firm told me no new money coming.
Yep.
I got to make do with what I got.
Mhm.
I got to show profitability. You know, we've gone back to, remember the old 80-20 rule,
Yep.
80% of your revenues coming from 20% of your reps.
Yep.
Well, that's only, I believe, gotten worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, money being free made sales. I think it gave a lot of reps some false confidence because, and including myself, by the way, and I'm not taking myself out of this equation. I mean, I was riding high towards the end of 2022, right? I mean, I had built this business, you know, about 6 million ARR and about 20 employees. And all of a sudden, the beginning of 2023 hit, and all of my clients had money with SVB. Like all my clients are tech and SaaS. So Silicon Valley Bank, right? When that hit, I went from 6 million to zero, like zero in 2 months, because I'm not an MRR company. I'm a professional services company, and
Right.
like no recurring revenue here. So clients stopped spending money, and it was like, holy shit, right? So even for me, I was like, I was kicking ass all the way, especially after COVID. When COVID hit and the SaaS world came together, like, oh my God, like this is a dream come true for me. I don't have to fly around the world to do this, and everybody's still behind their computers. Like, yeah, I'm killing it right now, right? But then I'm like, wait a minute, was I really that good? And when that hit, and so I think it was a reckoning for a lot of people, and at least in the tech and the SaaS industry. And I think every industry has its ebbs and flows. Or just like let's go back to the mortgage industry, right? When mortgage rates were through the floor, I mean, every idiot and their brother became a mortgage broker, right? And because they thought they could sell mortgages, that wasn't sales, that was order taking. Right. So I think that is a shock now. It's like, oh my God, I have to work. I do say that I do, and this is me sounding like I'm like my dad every time I get older and older, but I do think work ethic has suffered quite a bit. That's the one thing that concerns me about this younger generation is like there doesn't seem to be that drive to work. And I don't mean like the traditional sense. I mean just work for anything, quite frankly, right? But you said something earlier about like the that I want to bring up, which is the laziness factor. And this is my concern. We've gone from a search engine like Google to an answer engine. And so, for instance, like, we can all argue, look, when we searched on Google previously, we can all argue that Google fed us whatever it felt like feeding us, right? That type of thing. But at least there was a perception of choice. So we had to kind of go through critical thinking a little bit, read a couple of articles and say, okay, that's my truth right there. I'm going to use that one. Now we've gone with AI to an answer engine where you just put it in, it'll give you the answer. And that's dangerous, A, because it's pulling off the internet. And we all know the internet isn't exactly always accurate, if at all, for crying out loud. And B, it's taking the thought, it's taking the learning out of it. It's taking the business acumen away from it because most, unfortunately, reps and society are lazy as shit. So going to 80-20 rule, 80% of the people are just going to go into ChatGPT, ask it a question, take that answer, and then regurgitate it. And in that case, I do not understand what the point of the human is. Because my fear is, I'm not worried about AI taking over sales reps' jobs, like per se. I think it's going to help augment, it's going to help turn them into superpowers for the ones who are cool. What my concern is actually when the client realizes the value of AI And I tell any rep who doesn't think they're in trouble right now, go into ChatGPT and pretend like you're a customer. Pretend like you're a potential customer for your product or service, right? So for me, I would go in and I would say, I'm a VP of sales at a 50-person sales team. I got 20 SDRs. I got 30 AEs. I'm looking at some sales training for prospecting. I'm thinking about the JB sales training. What do I need to know about it? Tell me the pros and cons. How does that training compare to the other top 3 on G2 Crowd? And what are the, da, 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 da. And when you realize in a 5-minute conversation with ChatGPT, you get more value out of some 22-year-old kid who's going to, ask dumbass Bant questions and drone through a meaningless demo. Like, you start to realize, like, whoa. So my fear is, like, when the client starts to wake up and go, wait a minute, I'm getting so much more value out of this conversation with ChatGPT than I am the rep. Why do I need the rep? So that's the big challenge. That's the big fear right now. And if reps don't wake up to it, they're absolutely going to get replaced. And you probably heard this a million times. I've been saying it for years now, ever since I saw this. I don't think we're going to get replaced by AI, at least not yet. I know we're going to get replaced by reps who learn how to use AI. Like, that's a fact. So you're not seeing mass layoffs right now. You're seeing no hiring, because they're taking these AI tools, and instead of hiring another 10 reps, they're giving the 10 reps that they have these tools. They're educating those people on how to use them, and they're multiplying their productivity by 1,000. Or they're using some of these tools to take care of the admin bullshit so that the rep can actually spend time with the client. And if you got one of those reps that gets it and is curious and is thoughtful and is, a problem solver, man, AI is a superpower for that type of person.
So you said a couple of great things in there. And for our listeners, like, when I think, it's interesting, right? You talked about the 10, 60, 30.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I bet you 100% of our listeners believe they're in the 10.
Of course.
So since that's their thought process, I wanted to give them, like, hey, here's some tips to kind of think about, because they're points that you made. You brought up critical thinking. There's a difference between, prompting the question and getting an answer and then just feeding it along, to asking the questions, getting an answer, and then being, wait, does this sound right? Where did it get it from? Can I validate this? And does this match my own opinion?
Yeah. Give me the opposite perspective on this. Give me the contrarian view here. Why is this interesting? I don't even talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. I don't understand why somebody would care about this. Those type of things. Like, if you are curious, holy smokes, it's a superpower. But if you're not, it's a replacement.
It's those two things, right? You mentioned critical thinking and you mentioned curiosity. You got to be curious enough to not, like I always say, you got to be curious about your customers. Sure. What business are they in? Yeah. What's working? What's not? How do they make money? Yeah, you got to get, forget about what you're selling for a second. That's key. And it's the same thing in using these tools. You're getting an answer back.
Yep.
Do you have the ability to apply critical thinking to that answer and be curious enough to really go down the rabbit hole to kind of feel like, hey, do I validate these things? Do I believe it that they are? I used it recently. I need to write this 1-pager about value selling across the whole go-to-market. And I go, yeah, I got it in there. I just haven't typed this crap up. So I basically gave it multiple sources, and I said, this is what I think it is. Give me something back. And I read it back. I go, damn.
Perfect.
But I have the ability to go, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. We don't even offer that workshop. I don't know where you came up with that. Yep. So let me tweak that. And I made probably 8 or 10 tweaks. Yeah. And it was great content. But, back at the beginning, I asked a long question with my opinion in it. And 2, I had to have the critical thinking curiosity to go back and validate. And I actually knew the topic. Yeah. And that's where, if people aren't going to be willing to know their products and know their markets, if you're just relying on ChatGPT to do your job, then we don't need you.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I think, a societal problem here that I'm searching for. And if you listen to my podcast, you'll hear me ask this question multiple times to people, because I don't know what the answer is. And it's, if you think of any profession, right? When you and I were growing up in sales, Like, I don't know about you, but I mean, I did some grunt shit work. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, door to door, knocking on door. Like, I didn't even have a CRM. We barely, I mean, I graduated in 98, right? So we barely had email. It was all, I had stacks of papers that I would write down notes on, and I would go to places. I would take a picture with my actual camera and come home and like look up all those places on the internet and stuff like that. And all that grunt work, which by the way, I didn't love doing. It was all crap. I hated it. But it allowed me to get the business acumen, the context, the grit, and everything else that allowed me to be the sales professional that I am today. So I can have this conversation with you without a script, without worrying about what I'm saying next, and I know how to guide like all that stuff. But now, pick any entry level role of any job. AI can do it better than entry level kids can. Period. Like, think of a lawyer. Okay, let's pick a lawyer for a second. You go to school, you get your law degree, then you pass the bar. Then the first 5 years is just like both like case precedent, just sifting through papers and what
work.
Hey, ChatGPT, could you just scan the Library of Congress and tell me the top 3 cases that are most relevant to my, right? So the big boy lawyer can then do that and then be like, nope, yep, okay, cool. We don't need all that grunt work from the entry level kids anymore. And the other thing is that our society kind of tolerated it. Like, we tolerated the young sales professional making the cold call to us, asking the bullshit question, because that's just the way it was. We tolerated the fact that it was going to take 3 weeks for our lawyer to get back to us because they had to do all that grunt work, whatever it is. Now that tolerance is over. And so I don't know. My 2 questions are this. One is, if all that grunt work for the early age sales rep, whoever it is taken care of and being done better than by AI, then where do the fundamentals come from? But I think more importantly and more interesting, what are the fundamentals anymore? Like, I don't even know. And I think, quite frankly, IQ is over. Like, IQ is over. These things already know more than us. They're smarter than us. They're faster than us. So it's all about EQ. It's all about the human connection. It's all about being able to have a genuine conversation. It's all about what I call the give a shit factor. And that's the one thing I've honed in on, is like, that's the one thing that AI can't do. It can't give a shit. It can try, it can pretend to, but fundamentally it can't care. And we can. And so I think that's the key here, is that you have to give a shit. You have to genuinely care about the person. Like, quick anecdote here, Morgan Ingram used to work with me. And he would do and he was an SDR and an SDR manager before he worked with me. And when he caught on board, he was an SDR. He was cranking out, messaging and cadences and all that other stuff. And he was doing a good job, right? But they kind of leveled off. And he said, John, like, I feel like I'm doing all the right stuff, but my cadence is just, I'm not getting the results I would expect from the work that I'm putting in. I was like, he's like, what do I need to do to improve? And I said, Morgan, your results aren't going to change until one thing does. And he says, what? I said, until you start giving a shit, man. And he goes, what? I go, look, I know you care about your job. I know you care about working here, but until you start caring about the person that you were reaching out to, like, and treating them as a person, not a cadence, not a number you have to hit, not a sequence you have to build, but a genuine person who wakes up in the morning, has problems, has put their kids, is probably yelled at by their boss, and is going through their day to day. Until you think of them that way, your results aren't going to change. And so when you do give a shit, it comes through in your messaging. Like, AI can write the most personalized message you've ever seen in your life, but I can still tell that it's AI. You know why? And the only way I can put my finger on it is it just doesn't have a soul. Like, there's just something missing about these AI messages that I'm getting. And probably they'll get that much better, soon or whatever it is. But every single email I get, the most personalized email I could possibly imagine, I'm like, no, something's off about this thing. I don't know what it is. And my thing is, if I know it's AI, I'm all in. I'm curious. I'll read it. I'll look at it. But if I feel like I'm being duped by AI, like a AI pretending to be human, as soon as I sniff that, I don't care about what the thing is. I discredit it immediately.
Interesting. We've also, I think, bombarded people, right? People. Some folks have taken like business development and looked at it like a manufacturing process. Well, that's just got to do more.
Yeah, we've overprocessed. Like, that's what I'm saying. Over the past 10 years, we've way over-engineered the sales process. And don't get me wrong, I talk a lot in my training about science and art. I think sales is obviously a science and an art. I've always said that I think sales should be more of a science than an art, right? Because the structure, the process allows our art form to us to figure it out. Problem is, I think we've over-scienced sales. Like now there's almost no art involved in it. And now it's like, no, I got to check my box. You're at stage 1. Now you're stage 2. Now you're at stage 3. And my conversion ratios are this and this. It's like, when was the last time we just talked about having a normal conversation with somebody to help them solve a problem?
You could see that too in the tech stack. I would be at an SKO and I'd see sales enablement present, and it looked like freaking NASCAR slide. Oh. This is all the tech we're throwing. I go, you're lucky if these people are using 2 of those, maybe 3.
Well, and now we're all consolidating, right? So that's another challenge. Not only is money not free anymore, but we're going through this as a society. We kind of go through this expansion, contraction, right? So let's look at the internet, right? With mainframe computers. It started with a mainframe, right? It was a centralized hub, and that was right. So it was all kind of a platform, if you will. Then we went to PCs. Oh, okay, now everybody's got their own individual thing. Then we went to the cloud. Right now it's all central, then we went to this, then we went to, and we're now in the tech world. It's like we go from platform to point solutions, to platform to point solutions, to platform to point solutions. Right. And I think now we're going back to platform because nobody wants 57 tools. They're all looking for one source of truth. And now with AI, these big platforms can add all this cool stuff. So I'm really concerned for a lot of the point solution companies out there, because I just don't know how they win moving forward with these big boys having the money that they do and having the AI tools and the ability to adjust their platforms now better than ever.
Plus, you got the expense, right? You start looking at all these subscriptions you just signed up for. You're like, whoa, what's going on here?
Oh,
I gotta. So that's added.
Yeah, I pay like $900 a month just to watch a TV show that I have to pay $19.99 for anyways, for crying out loud. I got Hulu, Disney, you name it. I got 700 of these things. And one day I'm going to look at it all and be like, wait a minute, what am I paying for? I have no idea why I'm paying $1,000 a month to still have to pay $19.99 to watch a stupid movie, for crying out loud. It's the same tech stack.
That could be a whole other episode.
You want me to get me ranting on something, man? Let's go.
All right. So let's pivot to this.
Yep.
So let's say we got the sales leader, that CRO, VP of sales out in the audience, and they're going, "You're right.
Yep.
What do I do about it?"
Yep.
What would be some pieces of advice, and I'll even throw one out to start, because you said it, because I've kind of start talking to folks that go, "Look, I'm not giving you a framework to go sell someone, to bamboozle them to buy. How about I give you a framework so you can have a better conversation? So you can learn more about." Everybody talks about building relationships, which is a little pet peeve of mine, because I think they just think of it too simplistically.
Way too simple.
No one's buying from me because I buy them beer.
No.
Or I'm funny at the bar.
No.
They're buying from me because I solve a complex problem for them and I provide value in doing so.
Exactly.
You got to have a conversation to get to that level of relationship.
Exactly.
That would be one of my pieces of advice. When you think about training your folks or getting them better, how do you get them to be better at being curious enough to have a conversation? What is some of your advice?
Yeah, so this is an easy one, and it doesn't take a single dollar. I'd love to say buy my training and it'll solve all your problems. It'll give you frameworks, but I'll give you something that I think, and I recommend all my clients do, is I think we need to turn our entire sales org into a sales lab. So for instance, you know how engineers have hackathons, right? Where they pick something and they kind of nerd out on it for a little while and they figure it out, and they have contests around the hackathon of who can configure this or do whatever, right? I think we should do the same thing in sales. So here's my advice to people. I'd say once a week, but realistically, let's do once a month. Friday afternoon, pizza and beer, 2 hours. Ideally in person, if not remotely. You get your entire GTM team, your entire go-to-market, right? Marketing, sales, SEs, customer success even too. Bring them in there, right? And you outline all the different aspects of your process. I don't care what it is, right? And you pick something. I don't give a shit what it is. Prepping for meetings, coming up with a hypothesis, inputting content into CRM, summarizing conversations afterwards, developing whatever it is that is not optimal, like it's just not working for you, right? Or could be better. You break up into teams of 3 to 5 people, right? You put some of the senior reps with the junior reps. You put some of the engineers in the groups, right? So it's so that, the engineers bring the prompting, the senior reps bring the business acumen, the junior reps bring the tech native stuff, right? So we all kind of collaborate and work together. And then you give them a framework of how you want them to think, like approach the problem, right? what the problem is, what we're trying to accomplish, and what the result, right? You just give them that framework and you say, okay, everybody, you have an hour through all the AI free stuff out there. See if you can, whoever figures out the best way of addressing that thing, whatever that thing is, wins. And you let them go. So for an hour, they're, nerding out, AI, Perplexity, ChatGPT, whatever. And then at the end, everybody presents their solution. Hey, here's what we came up with. Then everybody votes on which one they like best. And whoever wins, then we just implement that next week. Be like, okay, everybody, now next week, when that thing comes up, make sure you do that approach or use that process or whatever that thing is. And then we'll get together at the end of the week and see how it worked. And then you just keep doing this and you iterate and you iterate and you iterate. Because look, every company right now, every rep at every company is panicking. We're all looking over our shoulders going, when is this shit going to replace us? Like it's just, and some people are going like deep into AI. Some people are scared to death of it. Right. So everybody's doing something. So my suggestion is let's control it here a little bit as an organization and leverage it, because there's the top down approach right now of making decisions for any type of tech stack thing in it, I think is a fool's errand. Any executive that thinks they're going to be the smart one to figure out what AI thing they can go ahead and implement across. First of all, you got to identify what the problem is. Then you have to go look at the vendors. Then you have to do the assessment. Then you have to implement. You are literally 6 to 9 months out of anything implementing in any real type of meaningful way. And can you honestly, Carlos, at this moment, tell me what you think this world's going to look like in 6 to 9 months?
It's fun to add to that little journey. You also have to get through security and compliance.
Yeah.
By the time you come out in 6 to 9 months, it's a different product that you even thought it was.
It's literally not even like it's so irrelevant right now. That's why ROI doesn't matter anymore. That's why ROI is bullshit. Nobody believes it because that's a future promise. And I'm sorry, there is not too many people I know that can say, yep, I know what it's going to look like in a year from now. So I can guarantee you, if you do this today, you're going to see X result tomorrow. So it's all about, what's my problem now? How can I fix it now? And is there an easy way to do this? And if you do the approach that I said with like a sales lab, you can actually collaborate with your team. You'll come up with, potential solutions to problems, ideally reduce your tech stack because you can find some pretty cool free stuff out there right now. You'll improve employee satisfaction because they'll be working together and collaborating. And you'll also improve employee retention because they'll want to stay longer because they feel like they're learning and they're being supported along the way and they're being involved in the process as opposed to being told what to do.
I like it. All right. I love it. No, I only wish that our podcast was longer, John, because I think we could talk about a million more ideas for these folks. My friend. But to close this thing out, let me turn around on you, John. Tell me a little bit about yourself. You're a lot of people know you, but for those that might not, can you tell me a little bit about your background or yourself?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I've been in sales longer than I'd like to admit. Doing this for 30 years. I do sales training, but I don't really consider myself a trainer. I'm just a sales rep who happens to train. I'm out there selling every day, just like everybody else is. I do all my own prospecting. I told you I was 6 million and 20 employees. I'm back to just being me and my COO. And it's just, I'm out there every day, trying to figure out what's going on. So I do all my own prospecting, all my own discovery, all my own negotiations, do my trainings, build my brand, do all my social posts, all that stuff. And what I'm trying to do is just learn out loud with everybody. I've been blessed with some pretty cool experiences in my career. I worked, a marketing degree. I worked for DeWalt. I worked for Xerox. That's where I got my kind of real sales education. I did a startup, self-funded, sold it to Staples, got fired from Staples because I don't fit in the corporate world, got into training. They screwed it up. I took it over, went off on my own. So I've had some cool experiences, but I know I don't know everything. And so I just have access to some pretty cool people and some pretty good stuff. And so for me, my JB Sales Learning Lab is my platform that I have all my content and I share everything that I'm learning along the way. And more about frameworks and stuff like that than any specific technique. Because I believe that right now, I used to train techniques like a lot. I was actually known early career 15 years ago as the technique guy, as the super tactical, here we go, which is because that's kind of, I'm a keep it simple, stupid guy. But now I've shifted towards more frameworks to test and try different approaches because I think in Agile, an agile framework is necessary because what worked 6 months ago is just not working anymore right now. So you got to keep testing and iterating and trying. And so, anybody can go check out what I'm doing at jbarrows.com, jbarrows.com. That's where you'll find everything, my membership, but a ton of free resources too, like YouTube. I got my podcast, Make It Happen Mondays. And I answer any question that you have for me on Instagram. So free consulting if anybody needs it or wants it. John M as in Michael Barrows is my handle on Instagram. Hit me up there, DM me, and I'll get back to you with almost anything I can help with.
Awesome, John. I think it's great. And it's one thing you said too that I just want to reiterate for folks is, sales is a thing that it's really easy. If you do not do it constantly, you become really preachy about how to do it.
Oh.
If you're not in the trenches every day, feeling the pain, seeing, for example, just getting a contract through procurement. If you're not doing it, you can come up with all reasons why it's easy. Just ask this question. But man, it is a battle. And it is, if you want to stay sharp, you got to stay in it.
That's why I never wanted to be in training. Like when Basho came to me and said, John, you want to be a trainer? My answer was absolutely not. And they were like, why not? I'm like, I don't like sales trainers. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, most sales trainers are either failed sales professionals or professional presenters. And, we've all been there where we sat in a training where some guy with a 3-piece suit that's too big doing a role play that nobody ever do in real life. And it's like, and especially now, let's go like real quick. There's so many influencers and sales trainers right now who were successful back in 2018, 2021, and all these things. Right. And I'm like, are you still selling today? Because I've never been in a sales environment today that's like it is right now. The whole quick, better, faster, cheaper, right? You can have two, but not all three, right? We're in a scenario where I've had clients, better, faster, and cheaper, John, all three, still not going to do it. And it's because of the risk factor, right? So if you are still relying on techniques that worked 5 years ago and you're still pretending and preaching to people about that now, I'm going to question everything. My first question, and this is my last tip to everybody, every time you do a training, if you just, and look, I'm a big fan, go to as many trainings as you can go to. But the first question you should ask is, hey, when was the last time you applied one of these techniques? And could you give me an example?
Yeah.
Like you, not you, and because you'll see the trainer go, well, I've worked with my customers too. No. When was the last time you walked in and did the upfront contract with somebody? When was the last time you reverse questioned or got to the pain funnel or filled out a stupid blue sheet for, you know what I mean? Like when was the last time you did that? And if they can't answer you and they've done it in the past 6 months, I wouldn't recommend listening to too much what they have to say.
Yeah. My favorite thing is, well, how about I talk about how I sold your boss?
Right. Yeah. Right.
In your situation. And then sometimes I'll even bring up, and here's your mutual success plan that I did for your CEO.
Yep.
And those are the more fulfilling ones. In fact, sometimes I'm always like hesitant, almost like, hey, are you okay if I show this to your team? Because part of what you told me the problem was your team.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, all right, man. Hey, what's your 1% edge these days? What are you working on to get a little bit better every day?
I'm the AI stuff. I'm building custom. I think the best way to learn about AI and ChatGPT and stuff like that is to build your own custom ones. So I am building massive amounts of my own personal GPTs to do things. And I'm learning along the way, right? So I'm learning how to prompt. I'm learning how to, and I'm offloading a lot of stuff because now I'm going back to superpower here. I do all my own blogs. I do all my own and I would write all of that. I would do every exercise that a client would send me. I'd give the review, but now I've done so many of those, like I'm sure you have, and I've had all that documented. So now I'm creating these GPTs to help me review emails, to help me give feedback, to help me create content, to help me, right? But again, not as the easy button, just to ideate, brainstorm, whatever, and then help me craft it so I can be that last mile. So right now I am absolutely hammering that. And my new project is I gotta learn editing. I gotta learn how to edit so that I'm not spending massive amounts of money on all these stupid marketing firms that are charging me, X amount of dollars to edit a video and make it TikTokified or something like that. Cause the tools out there are just so easy that I just gotta get over a weekend and figure this thing out. So to me, I'm diving head deep into AI and I'm creating all sorts of cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. I think it's a great conversation.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, that does it for this week's episode. Please, if you found value in it, comment back, subscribe. Love to hear from you. And Until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success.